Philosophical paradigms. There are four major philosophical paradigms that exist. Deriving from this major philosophical paradigm is your educational philosophy, that is a subset of this major educational paradigm. No, sorry, the major philosophical paradigm. Let's go through the four. So the four are idealism, realism, pragmatism, and existentialism. So these four will give us the entire scope of the philosophical approach. So the first one we shall talk about is the idealism. Okay, it started off with Plato. Okay, Plato is often credited for formulating idealism philosophy or idealist philosophy, one of the oldest that exist. It is heavily influenced by Plato and Augustine. They agree that the highest aim is the search for truth, the enduring values. So basically, they view the world as an ideal state, and there's a fixed way to approach this. Plato believed that ideas could be integrated into a universal concept and a meaningful whole. So what basically Plato and people of that nature, or people who believe in idealism, talk about, basically there's an ideal world, there are a whole bunch of discrete knowledge. Understanding the right combination of knowledge will bring about enlightenment. And then uh, Kant, on the other hand, believed it is possible to achieve moral clarification but not possible to arrive at absolute universal truth. So what Kant is saying here is the journey towards perfection, it's ever ending. You can make, as you get closer and closer to the journey of perfection, there is always a journey left. For example, let me give you an example. If I was to take a A4 paper and fold it into half, what would you get? You'll get half a paper. And then if you fold that into half, you'll get quarter. And if you go on folding this paper again and again and again, the paper will get smaller and smaller and smaller, but it will never disappear. So that's what Kant is saying, that it's possible to it's possible to arrive or approach absolute universal truth, but never to fully attain it. So Hegel also talked about the same thing, that it is progress towards truth, continuously synthesizing theses and antitheses, thereby achieving a higher level of understanding. So Hegel talks about, if you constantly deliberate with what you know and what you don't know, and you argue back and forth, you will slowly move towards a higher order, but never the absolute truth. To an idealist, learning is primarily an intellectual process that involves recalling work with ideas. Education is properly concerned with conceptual matter. Idealist educators prefer curriculum that relates ideas and concepts to one another. The curriculum is hierarchical. It constitutes humankind's culture, heritage, and based on learned discipline, as exemplified by the liberal arts curriculum. At the top of the hierarchy are the most abstract subjects: philosophy, theology, mathematics. These are all important because it cultivates abstract thinking. History and literature rank high because they offer moral education. Language is important because it enables communication and conceptual thought. Lower on the curricular ladder is science because it deals on empirical evidence rather than conceptual. Uh, so idealist basically appreciates the notion that truth is attained through conceptual being, and we will discuss the subsequent philosophy which has a completely reciprocal view of this idea. Aristotle is often linked to the development of realism, another traditional school of thought. Realists view the world in terms of object and matter. People can come to know the world through the senses and their reason. As an opposed the previous idealist approach, one would perceive the world conceptually, but here it's perceived through senses and through reason. Like idealists, realists stress on curriculum comprising of separate areas of study, such as history and zoology. Also, like idealists, realists rank the most general and abstract thought are stressed. The three R's, basic education, are also given much importance to realism, or people who subscribe to realism. Whereas idealists consider classic ideas subject matter because for the craving enduring moral truth. Realists value the sciences as much as the arts. Realists look at the function of value before the ideal value. So if you look at the notion that realism is very well grounded to the present. They don't believe that there is a collection of knowledge that will somehow liberate us. And they give lots of importance to, as we were saying, importance to knowledge gained through senses and reason. Okay, and but unfortunately, they too have a hierarchy of knowledge. That means there are certain subjects they consider to be more important than the other. Pragmatics is the third kind of philosophical approach. See, in contrast to the previous traditional approach to philosophy, that is idealism and idealism and realism, pragmatism, on the other hand, generally refer to experimentalists. It is based on change, process, and relativity. See, they don't believe that there is truth out there. The truth is it's that is constantly changing and is relative to the present. Whereas idealism and realism emphasize on subject matter, pragmatism pragmatism approaches knowledge from the perspective of process, in which reality is constantly changing. So, in pragmatists, will view learning as a person who engages on problem and solution basis rather than absorbing content. So, for them, transferable of problem solving is a key component of learning. So it's not about knowing something; it's how by you participating in an engaging environment, the content learned through the process of participation is far superior than someone just picking up and absorbing information elsewhere from elsewhere. So and then the most important here is pragmatists reject the idea of unchanging universal truth. So there you have it, folks. The third dimension that is very grounded in the now and present, as opposed to the idealism and realism that previously we talked about. Assuming you are a pragmatist, and if you view education, you will be looking purely from the method, the method being more important than the subject matter. Questions such as why, how come, what if are much more important than what, who, and when. So people like William James developed a principle of pragmatism which rejects the dogma of preconceived truth and eternal values, promotes testing and verifying ideas. Truth no longer was an absolute and universal. Okay, so Dewey, who viewed education as a process for improving human condition, saw pragmatism as a way to launch his educational philosophy. Dewey saw schools as specialized environment within a larger social environment. Ideal curriculum was based on child's experience and interest, and he prepared, or he proposed, or he prepared child's life affairs. Okay, the subject matter was interdisciplinary. Dewey emphasized problem solving from a scientific approach. So as you can see, Dewey draws a lot of relevance from this notion or from this perspective of philosophy. And subsequently, if you are already should be aware that Dewey is one of the greatest contributor to modern education. The final philosophical approach is existentialism. See, according to existentialist philosophy, people continuously make choices and hereby define themselves. We are what we choose to be. In doing so, we make our own essence of self-identity. So, from an existential perspective, the individual choices seem to be paramount. Existentialists advocate that students to choose how and what they study. So a lot of student-centered curriculum and all this that we are quite familiar with are embedded in this philosophy, or embedded with existentialism as a prominent philosophy. Existentialism rejects the imposition of group norms, authority, or established order. So once again, we talk about student-centric assessment. So instead of having they would argue that an assessment should be judged on one's own learning style and from one's own perception of knowledge, rather than having a universal tool. An existentialist curriculum would consist of experience and subject that the learner themselves the freedom to choose and experience. For example, the arts would be stressed because of cultivating self expression, portraying the human condition and situation involving choices. Teachers and students would discuss their lives and choices. In particular, subjects like literature, drama, music, art would reflect self-expression activities to illustrate emotional feelings, insight, and all conducive to existentialism thinking. So you can see, for example, in the picture above, we talk about global warming. There are people who believe that global warming is a hoax, and they will study from this perspective that global warming is nothing more than a natural occurring phenomenon, and human activity is insignificant compared to the grandeur of the universe. And we had ice age and coming back and forth over the years, that the human activity in the last 100 years is insignificant to the way the universe functions. On the other hand, there are environmentalists who see that, who blame or who believes that human activity in the last 100 years has directly contributed to the global warming, I guess, situation. So an existentialist classroom will give space for both ideas to be equal, and people will approach it from their own perspective.